that the petrol is retailing at this morning. The price of a litre of petrol, diesel or paraffin has crossed the 200 shilling mark for the first time after the energy regulatory last night announced new retail prices for the next month. For Kenyans, this means food, electricity, transport and other related costs can only go up. And also you have illustration there of how that is faring right now. 211, that is an increase of 17 shillings. Also on diesel, we have an increase of 21 shillings to 200 shillings as it is right now. And kerosene 202, that is an increase of 33 shillings. The people who are using kerosene, I think that the largest hit, Kipruto Rapkirwa, on this as well. But let's just hear from you. So, and juxtaposing this with the National Oil Corporation that was meant to be a cushioning factor in times of depressing moments like we are waking up to today, it has failed to live to that particular mandate.
Yeah, there are three issues, and I will start from where Dr. Green left. That this administration needs to create teams, and teams can only provide solutions in a synchronized way. Otherwise, we'll be doing a lot of wastage, because for every issue that does arise, including the issue of blackout the other day, you get different shades of opinion from three different institutions of government. That is something that there is no teamwork within the system. The second issue is also to reduce on propaganda and try to lie less, because we politicians are believed to be liars, while if that is not, while I do not believe that you must lie just because you're a politician, we've almost confirmed to those who doubt us that politicians are liars, and this regime has the biggest number of liars than any other regime that I've seen in my lifetime. Number three, we need to improve communication so that communication comes from a source that has distilled the issues for purposes of ensuring that the public gets proper communication. And finally, there is totally lack of leadership in all the things that are happening in this regime. Lack of leadership in the sense that some things could have easily been solved, but because we seem to be fighting the previous regime, we are not solving problems. You hear stalled projects just because it was started by the previous regime. We shy away from completing them, and we want to do the opposite of what they were doing, and yet we are part of that regime. Finally, this regime seems to be keen on collecting resources for purposes of the next election, because, as it was well put by Professor Naituli, you would have expected Kenya Pipeline to have been at the forefront in terms of the government fronting purposes of government-to-government fuel subsidy, fuel arrangement. But then, today we are learning that the same regime that was telling us we are going to be buying fuel in Kenya shillings is looking for 580 billion Kenya shillings in dollars to ensure that they pay for the fuel that they were getting for the last 6 months from government-to-government fuel arrangement, which means also it was a lie for us to be told that we are going to buy fuel in Kenya shillings, while we know now that it would have been a transaction between an entity here in Kenya that was going to benefit some individuals and elsewhere. Finally, remember the 15 cases that we lost billions, and it was involving some individuals within this regime. And most of those individuals are now in appointed position, whether it is KRA, whether it is elected position. They are in government today. You do not expect those individuals to do anything better. They are looking for money to buy their positions again should the current regime win the next election. That is where I feel Kenyans are, and we are here for a big shock, because the 18% that they now want to take VAT pretending to be in tandem with these East African countries, while other taxes which are there are not, which are here are not there, is a way of robbing the Kenyan public of the very little that is left of us. And you know, you cannot, you know, this, even this Pamba harvest, Deba, let me tell you, if this country will harvest more than 30 million bags of maize, February next year, there will be an importation. I'm not a prophet, but I was in that ministry for 5 years, and I traveled this country. Go to Kajiado here, go to Makueni. It is just in the center of Makueni. Go to Machakos County, go to Nakuru, go to Baringo. Those are the areas where we're getting some little maize. Go to the entire coast. There is not enough maize. Even Trans Nzoia, where I come from, if you see the color of the maize is different from what we call a Pamba harvest. And yet we are pretending and telling the public there will be Pamba harvest. We are not even preparing ourselves for El Nino. What are we going to do should the El Nino come and ravage what we are supposed to be harvesting? We lose half of that crop.
But the president was very confident that we have a bumper harvest and we are even ready to export.
You know the president has survived by lying. So I think it would be a mistake for me to believe him. He was in the same ministry after me. I was in that ministry for 5 years. It never lasted because the 8 million bags that I had kept in National Cereals and Produce Board, he came and sold in a funny way, and yet then he was transferred to Ministry of Higher Education. So some of these things, we are really getting tired of lies and lies. Which place does he expect maize to be harvested the way we have harvested in the past? I come from Trans Nzoia. I'm a farmer in Trans Nzoia. I'm a farmer in Nakuru. I'm a farmer in Kajiado. So where does he expect this maize to come from? We live in this country. Laikipia, today there is rain in Laikipia, but they lost the first crop. So where is this going to be, this Pamba harvest?
All right.
Yeah.
I wanted just to wind up on the issue of fuel prices. We gravitate to other issues as well. But let me just pick the brains of Dr. Kalua. And still, with the National Oil Corporation, there was a proposal that, or maybe a plan that KenGen will be now liaising with the National Oil Corporation in terms of putting up the electrical or the EV charging points all over the country. Do you think, first of all, we are ready for, as I asked, for the EV? Because is it tailor-made for just the commuting around the city, or you can actually have, you know, the long trunks road being used by the EVs? Because people say that it can only last or go for only 20 kilometers, then you need recharging.
Yeah. 20
kilometers, you need recharging. And if going by what we hear, recharging takes 6 hours, then how am I supposed to plan on a journey like to Mombasa?
I think we are ready for EV as a country. We need to deal with a lot of misinformation. Just offline, I was talking with a good professor, and he agrees with me that what he may have consumed as information may be wrong information in terms of what an EV is supposed to give, because the vehicle now being made in Kenya and others that are also coming, also supported by the EV Association of Kenya, which Kenya has now grown into, you are able to find a vehicle that can take you to 300 or more kilometers. Vehicle costing about less than 2 million, you can say.
I think the reference the professor was using maybe was a contraption.
Yes, yes. Don't worry. We have sorted it out, and he now wants to buy an EV immediately after this.
Because that contraption that has been made by a young man in the village in Laikipia.
That's okay.
So I'm using that as a template.
Yeah, because he has just confessed that coming to this studio, he is using 2,000 Kenya shillings. I am using 20 shillings.
But this
is a reality based on all aspects, that you can charge the vehicle in your own home, and therefore EPRA and all these organizations.
Is the charging?
It's 2 shillings. The cost is 2 shillings worth of electricity per kilometer. 2 shillings. And it is a reality. The battery life will last for up to 10 years. And after the 10 years, it's not that it's gone. It has only reduced by 20%. So it's at 80%, which can also be bought back and also can be used for energy in the home. These are realities. And we can be able to apply this in the best way possible for the good of our country. We have buses. We have motorcycles that are being used. And you can imagine, over and above the big story of carbon and emissions and all that, that it is practical. We need to start moving. One of the things that you have just said, the subsidy of electricity, and at 2 shillings is when I charge it in my home, where the cost is 27 shillings per unit. In the stations that have been erected by the various Ministry of Energy stations is less than a shilling or even 80 cents per unit, because they're charging at 7 shillings per unit. So these are realities. But let me now deal with what we need to deal with as a country. There is no room for corruption that should be allowed. There should be proper undertaking by every official, whether be it a CS or a PS. There is no room for not being accountable. Things have been raised here that are very important. Why is it that we don't know who are the investors in independent power production? And I think there is an opportunity by the government to come out and say these are the investors. And this is the much that they are earning. And this is the much that it is costing Kenyans. Because the more we keep this information, the more the people imagine that everything that is said by the government, by the president, is a lie. Yet there could be good intention. There could be a minimal lie in between. There could be no lie at all. There could also be almost something totally different. And the best way is to call for accountability. If an officer is hiding something from Kenyans, you know, imagine in the house if a father appears with a loaf of bread and he opens a shirt here and he's just removing a little bit and eating, like we used to do when we were watching movies, the free movies in the village. You're just pinching a bit, and then people wonder, hey, Father, have you put on the entire bread of what used to be called kumanina bread, or the large bread, or which one it is? People want to know. Maybe it is a queen cake that your father is eating, but the moment you place it on the table, there is peace. And that is what the government should be like. That is what the things that people, and this is what I'm calling communication. Kenyans are feeling like the government does not care about them, and this is something that we can deal with very, very effectively. And this does not lie only in the oil industry. It is in everything that we have in this country. And it's not an issue of hiding wisdom or choosing not to say the truth, as my good professor will say. It is believing in changing. We are stuck with the government that we have. We elected them. And the only other time that we have an opportunity is in 2027. But today we must call everyone into account. We must change. People, heads must roll. It's not an issue of kubembelezana. It's getting things done in the best way possible for the good of Mwananchi. There is no reason why Mwananchi should be suffering when we have leaders. And leaders who are supposed to be accountable. So
do we have a double face of the president when he will be so hard on the sugar sector, where yet on the energy and the power sector, he seems to not really coming down hard on them as well? Because he's raising a very serious concern that yes, we have, and we know we are suffering because we have the independent power producers, some of these contracts that are very skewed against the government. And that is not the president. It is the CS Chirchir to be able to come out to say the reality of things and why things are being done the way they are done. But let's just begin even with the National Oil Corporation, where you have a chair who used to be a Minister of Energy, and where these contractual agreements were made, and he has been flagged to be one of the beneficiaries as the IPPs. And yet he is a chair now of the National Oil Corporation itself.
Exactly. Conflict of interest.
This is a conflict of interest.
Yes.
So if the
Conflict
president
of
is really
interest.
meaning well on slaying and stanching the flow of corruption in this country, why doesn't he have an even keel that, you know, slays all these areas that seems to be popping out the heads of corruption? That's the question we're asking. You cannot be dealing with one sector and you leave the other sector.
Let me
because
finish
even that sector that you're trying
to say it.
No, because we have 67 billion shillings that we're going to be bailing out on the sugar sector, right? Still, the sugar sector will be heavily consumers of that particular energy.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you are fighting one portion of it, but the other one, which is very key in driving even the entire country forward.
Let me finish this as I leave it to Professor to slate. This conflict of interest is not only in the oil sector. Very recently, there was a confession, and I was shocked to the core. The Kenya Forest Service. One of the officials is a sawmiller in his true sense of life, but he was appointed to the committee as a member of the Kenya Forest Board as a representative of the Forest Management Association. Getting there seems, and this is not me, is a cry by officials of Kenya Forest Service. He gets there and he turns out to be the sawmiller that he is supposed to be. This is across board. It is not only this institution, and that is where I'm saying we are stuck with this situation. We need to call out those people by name. And they need to come out, because when they got into those offices, they promised not to be in conflict with what they are supposed to be doing. Let heads roll if they have to roll. Because Kenyans are suffering. Kenyans want to get service. Kenyans want to reduce the high cost of living. How then can we deal with that? If someone has been mentioned in the wrong way and in the wrong side of what is expected of them, let them step aside, or let them prove that they can actually stay and work and operate above what is the issue that they may be claimed to be. There is no one. The gentleman in Kenya Forest Service can choose to do the right things. You should see the confession and letters that have been brought forward. The officers in Oil Corporation, if there is an issue, let it be brought forward and let them operate above it. Kenyans are more important than any individual, because we are placed here by God and we deserve the best.
So this is
let's hear from Churchill. We'll come to you, Prof. Prof will come to you.
You know, I see the problem as emanating from the appointing authority. Because I've never been in government, but I know that before any serious appointment is made, and as the appointing authority proposes people for nomination to various positions, that the National Intelligence Service would do a background check and to establish how such any appointment would impact on the position for which one has been proposed. As an outsider, that is my shallow thinking of how appointments are done. And so before all these people are appointed, whether it is the forestry, whether it is the national oil, that people do not just, announcements are not just made. Proposals are made, names are forwarded. At least that's what I think, that's how I think government operates, or should operate. When we as civil society actors propose to form an organization and forward names and make applications to the NGO Coordination Board, to the Register of Societies, to the Register of Trust, and so on and so forth, Register of Companies, those applications are forwarded to the National Intelligence Service. And the National Intelligence Service will do a background check. So are we saying that in the case of these appointments, whether it is to the National Oil Corporation and forest and so on, that the appointing authority just woke up and said it must be so and so? Of course, I saw a very worrying announcement during the launch of the virtual university. Is it called? That's what it is called?
Yeah.
Open
Open University. when the president said, let it out during the issuance of the charter, that he insisted on who must be the chancellor. And it concerned me because it revealed a tendency of undue interference, that there was no due process, that whoever was appointed, there was firm instruction on who must be. And that was coming from His Excellency the President. Then I said, okay, so already positions are being created with certain people in mind, with certain interests to protect, and that perhaps is why we are suffering all these, high cost of fuel and charges paid in dollars by to the independent power producers and so on and so forth.
Well, let's wait up on this as well, unless you have anything to say. Prof, you wanted to say something, and also Kipruto Arab Kiro will wind up on the fuel prices.
Yes, some man lost a coin, and he was looking at it under a lamp like that one. And somebody came 2 hours later, and they found the person looking for that coin. They asked, "What are you looking all these hours?" He said, "I'm looking for my coin." "Are you sure you lost it?" He said, "I'm very sure I did not lose it here, but there is more light here." So this is what we are talking about here. Remember all these people who are removed by Uhuru Kenyatta kwa sababu ya corruption from different parastatus. They are all back in those positions. So we are looking for the coin where there is light, and we don't want to accept that. Now what I wanted to say here in response to my brother Kalua is that you don't have an honest government, Kalua. They used to give you an electricity bill, which you to specify how much you have used. Okay, units consumed in kilowatts, and then they will tell you how much that was. For costs and levies, they will tell you how much that is. VAT, they will tell you what the VAC is. Then they have some adjustment. So they have told you what constitutes your bill. They have changed that. Now you can't tell what they are charging you. And this is deliberate because people are arguing or complaining with the fact. Now they just send you the bill, and this is how the current bill will read. Your account, bill on date, current reading, previous if any units consumed, then bill amount, and then they tell you when to pay. They removed all the other, so you don't know what actually you are paying because people are specific in the complaints. Now, this is a cheating system, and government should never cheat its people. Because once the government cheats, then where are you supposed to go? Why are you left? So when you look at the power, the change of the power bill structure, the idea is to iron the facts. And the question now you need to ask yourself, why are those facts being hidden?
So let me say this on that. First of all, I come from the school of thought that government is me and everyone who is seated here and everyone who is watching. We are the government. And we need to be able to open our mouths in a very open mind and say what needs to be done. Write letters, not even just talk here. I'm the type that will write a letter to the minister and say, I think this is wrong, it needs to be corrected, whether they act on it or not. I have written letters to presidents previously and even now to say that this, I believe, is what is right. Because there is nobody who is going to come and help us to change this country. We need to call each other out. In terms of the appointments, as my brother has rightfully said, the current situation, the current constituency enables people who are wrong to be able to be in power. And that is what the leadership and integrity constitutional provision currently now as it is allows, because you can't hold these people into account in the way that you would want to be. And therefore we need to enhance what we need to do. We got to do what we have to do. The president works with the people that he is working with. He entered into a coalition before election. There is the expectation of the community that has given them the representatives that we have. We have a challenge with our parliament as it is today, Debal. I was seated with a very strong and highly respected, eminent person in this country. And he says, We don't have a parliament today. What can you read of a parliament of Kenya today in the last? And I listen, and he says, Kalua, during our times, we would listen, we would present things, Kenyans would feel they are represented. Today, it's like our members of parliament are not using their own minds to deal with issues. That is his view. But don't you think that the same parliament today has an opportunity? Every member of parliament has got an opportunity to rise up to the occasion, to be able to represent their people, to be able for people to understand that my Mheshimiwa, my MCA, this leader, understands that we are in pain. And even though it sounds, and it is indeed a global situation, can't we change in one way or another? And therefore, I want to call upon all of us that we need to take the government as our government, and that we need to change from within what we are able to do.
Thank you.
Communication must be improved. We must be felt to be empathetic to everybody who is, because how many Kenyans can reach you, Debal, to say how much they are suffering? And Mheshimiwa has just rightfully said, this is the time now to work on El Nino effects. This is the time.
Right.
The people from Mukambani, the crops they've been planting is not what they will plant. It will rot in the farm. They need to be guided on what they need to do. There is action that needs to be done that mwananchi can feel, hata kama ni mbaya. As I finish, remember that we keep saying, zamani barabara ya Buruburu ilikuwa mzuri. Before we used to have this kind of a situation, things were better. What is it that can be said today that either this government or previous government or our government, as it were, has done? And those are the things that we really need to wake up and deal with.
Right. Okay, talking about appointments as well, Waziri Bila Kazi is what is on the front page of Taifa Leo this morning. But we saw him at work last week with the appointment of Caroline Saroni as a National Trade Negotiation Council chair. But we want also to question some of these appointments that are there. Are they in any way connected with self-interests?
Yes.
With self-interest, if we may get back to just how there are connections between the appointments of Saroni and also other companies that are related to upper reaches persons in government.
Yeah.
So are they there to negotiate on behalf of the self-interested people in government, or it is purely on meritocracy? And are there no connections of nepotism in this appointments? That is what we want to ask. And I think we're here to keep our leaders accountable. That's why we call it Uongozi Today. So in case you make any appointments, can it be traced back that it is circling back to you at the end of the day? That's what I'm raising.
Yeah, Debal, it is very useful to realize that today, if I was minister in charge of certain portfolio, I have enough Kenyans that may be close friends of mine, or maybe people that I know and have known before. But what Churchill Suba said at the beginning, that is the normal and the standard government position. If you are given 3 names of people who have been interviewed, you usually check their background with NIS. At that particular time, they will give you a report of that individual, and that report will assist the minister to decide who among the 3 is going to be given the position. But what is worrying me today is that I don't think this regime believes in institutions. Because if they were believing in institutions, they would take a month or even less than that to get the right people among their friends. I may have 10 friends, but you see, I subject you to the same mechanism. And if 9 of you fail, or even 5 of you succeed, or 4 of you succeed, then I can pick from among those who have been filtered and vetted for purposes of ensuring there is some semblance of respect to institutions. But this regime does not believe in institutions. That's why they're trying to almost emasculate judiciary. They have finished the parliament, and now they are also in serious onslaught on political parties. All these are the basic structures of what we call democracy. And when you kill them all, and you just go like one-man show, you have already killed institutions, and therefore it is not important wherever you keep a certain position in government. That's why I'm worried and sympathize with Dr. Green when he talks about the wrong individuals being in certain positions. Those positions are given to them so that they continue doing the wrong things. How would you explain somebody who has a tax problem to the tune of 17 billion? The case is withdrawn and is made in charge of tax collection. How would you really, you can give somebody a job elsewhere. Somebody like me, if I've been somebody who's been a dealer in terms of certain minerals, then you don't have to give me to be minister for minerals. You can give me to be minister in charge of some other things. But it is like, it was like really smacking them on the face. Whoever was taken to court by the previous regime was given a job in the same place where he said to have made a mistake. And the rest is history. So for us, and I sympathize with Dr. Kalua, this regime will be like this, and they are collecting enough money perhaps to win the next election. So for another 9 years, we might as well put up with the situation.
All right. Well, let's just ask ourselves. Just let me respond to that. That's very deliberate. And I would want just to ask ourselves. See, the reality of life is such that first, let's talk about the KRA head appointment. Yeah. It can be said that he had 17 billion. We read.
Yes.
But there is a process that would then eventually prove that actually he owed that money, because it's an entire process that we may not be able to know. And he ends up being in that position. Okay? Let him finish. Let me finish. All I am saying is that, first of all, the Constitution as it is celebrates wrongdoing, particularly on leadership and integrity, as it is. So the foundation is messed up in one way or another, and it is time for us to change these kind of things. Hence what I am calling to get done over with other Kenyans. But we are stuck. The reality is that we are going to work with these people. The reality is that these people need to be held into account. The reality is that we are with this government as it is until 2027. That is what the law says. Playing outside that, without calling out the wrongdoers, if KRA has not met its collections annual, let us create a big issue at the moment, because whatever else that has been done is under and away from the issue. If they are not doing these things, if the budget is not being done properly, if the increase of collection and the revenue is not increasing, then there is an issue. Without having to pinpoint and blame, without clear image of all this. Because we are stuck, we are in this government, we can only call out and expect that the president is seeing this has not been done, so let's get it done. Kenyans are suffering here, they are not being met with whatever it is. Because away from that, we will just be crying babies. And that is what we really need to avoid.
All right, we need to wind up. We need to wind up to that, because it seems that Kalua insists that we are stuck with these people. So it's sort of
and not stuck in a bad way. We can do something about it.
But listening to you say we're stuck. We just like it or limp it. We are stuck with them. We have to wait for 5 good years. And I think that's not entirely the truth, so to speak, because when we speak, are we talking about the elective or the elected legislator? Are we talking about the appointees? Because we have other avenues to challenge some of these positions that you deem to be seeing that it didn't follow the due process, or meritocracy was not really, but it's the honors of a president to appoint them, whether we like it or not at the end of the day. But what is another avenue to challenge it?
Even,
I don't know what you want to say.
You see, I think today, Dr. Green, Kimathi Nimero. I think.
No,
What's it Kimathi?
Is Kereni Tomarete.
Tomarete, that's correct. So Tomarete today. You see, there's he is talking as if he hasn't been in Kenya actually, and that is strange because the truth of the matter, Tomarete, is that he said there has to be a way. Sure, there was a way. All these people were before court. The way was for the court to clear them first before they take those positions. So,
these are the people who made the president make it to power. And they are the same people that because I'm saying what is flawed is our constitution. It allows and celebrates. No, not flawed.
Right.
Sorry, I withdraw the word.
I really wanted to understand
withdraw the word flawed.
Celebrates a lack of integrity. I didn't quite get it.
I withdraw the word. I withdraw the word flawed. What I am saying that we have an opportunity as a country
to accept.
Get me this. Get me right. Yeah. Those are your words. We have an opportunity as a country to enable any appointment in future to be one that Kenyans can resonate with, to be one that is full of integrity, to be one that ethics are the beginning of everything else, one that we shall empower the EACC to get things done better as opposed to having political machinations. That is the Kenya that we are going to have in the near future. At the moment, the people who are appointed into these positions must be held into account and must be dealing with the things for the great respect and honor.
Thank you. All right. An alliance of 10 local human rights groups led by Kenya Human Rights Commission, KHCR, now wants the government to halt the planned rollout of the Maisha number, a unique personal identifier, that is UPI, slated for September the 29th. The group cited inadequate public participation and lack of robust legal framework in enacting the Maisha number as among the main areas of concern, even as the country gears to transition to third-generation identity cards. The organizations opposed to what they term as a rushed Maisha number rollout. They argue that the introduction of a Maisha number has overlooked essential steps needed for an identification system upgrade and reforms, including data privacy and safety. They are warning that the government's current efforts to develop a digital ID system are heading towards the same pitfalls that stalled the predecessor, Huduma Number.
So for the people who are going to read, please just make sure immunization, and when you're reading, please look at the cameras.
Rais Ruto, unakwenda ku roll out Maisha number roll out, ambayo ni kitu kizuri sana. Sisi hatuko hapa kuja kupinga unachokifanya, lakini tunakuambia rais, heshimu sheria. Uko na katiba iliyokuweka ofisini. Kwanza lazima tuwe na sheria ambayo ina guide utekelezaji wa hiyo Maisha number rollout ama UPI. Bila hiyo sheria, rais, tafadhali, hiyo ni wakati mrefu. We are in 21st century. Kama nilivyosema hapa, Huduma Number ni twin sisters na hii UPI. Hiki ni kitu kimoja. Ngozi ndio tofauti. Tuko na case saa hizi still live on Court of Appeal. Serikali kwa nini haitaheshimu? Na tutaangalia loopholes ziko wapi, mawakili wetu watazisil zile loophole, tutarudisha tena mahakamani. Manake is just a matter of changing from Huduma to UPI. Tutarudisha pale pale mahakamani, alafu tuone kitakachotokea.
So questions hanging over the Huduma Number. We spent almost 700 billion shillings on Huduma Number. Data was collected and concerns have been raised regarding also data. A lot of what is going on with the data harvesting. Where did this data go? There is no accountability from the government, and also we've had a panelist raising concerns regarding the communications that really come from government. Right now, they say this will cost 1 billion shillings. The other money that we had from Huduma number has not been accounted for. We don't know what really happened to it. We just want to hear the voice of Churchill Suba. Just give us a history. First of all, why do we need the Maisha number right now in the circumstances that we are in? And now we have also the fuel prices, which has popped up to 210. Let's go back to the history of it. It was a bit contentious. There was no legislation because now they put out the Huduma number. Then we saw they wanted to enact now so that it was challenged on the basis that it was an illegality and an unconstitutional. And the court has just made the same decision and determined that it was unconstitutional. Is this constitutional?
Leave alone, before I go into the constitutionality of it, I think the concerns being raised by my colleagues are in my view, very, legitimate. First of all, we need to start with what went wrong with the Huduma number. An honest audit, because government is a going concern. You cannot just, start new things because you don't like the face of those who led the previous one, that our current president was part and parcel of. And he kept on reminding us until the 13th of September 2022, when he took over the oath of office as the president, that he was the second in command. And we believe that he was also second in command in the initiation and implementation of the Huduma number. So first of all, in compliance with the provisions of the Constitution on public finance, that resources be deployed optimally for the benefit of Kenyans, I think it would be unwise not to go back into what was spent and what exactly is wrong, or whether, as the president has done with the CBC, there can be some way of looking at whatever may have gone wrong under the Huduma number and making improvements on it so that it is continued. But knowing how governments operate, this is about tenders. It boils down to tenders. The previous regime took their 10% from the Huduma number that this current regime may not have benefited optimally from. So they must come up with something. That's how governments are run. We have been told Governor Sakaja is not interested in the Green Park. And he's not saying, and he has just discovered that is the most strategic location that cannot be just used by matatus that carry ordinary folks. And that place is ideal for a multi-star hotel and so on and so forth. Again, it goes back to the tender. Come up with some idea that can gallop millions of taxpayers' money so that the regime can also generate, its own, 10%, as we are told it happens with all government projects. So I see a lot of wastefulness, issues of constitutionality and legality aside. First of all, we need to be told, taken through. In slang language, they say, tunataka kupelekwa na rieng, on what went wrong with the Huduma number, before we are told why, what makes the UPI different. Because if you look at both, they are one and the same thing. They are intended to capture the same data. Yes, of course, there are security concerns that Kenyans need to have, a foolproof identity system. But if the Huduma number, just like UPI, is meant to address that concern, why should we throw, the baby with the bathwater? And I think there is something that can be salvaged about, the Huduma number. We may want to call it UPI because the current regime, despite having been part of the previous one, wants to create the impression that they are completely new and had nothing to do with the old one.
Right, and that has been captured aptly also previously by Victor Ndulo. When you look at that editorial cartoon, in the previous regime where they were together, now he's speaking the blocks from Huduma number, trying to reconstruct the new Huduma number, the Maisha card as it is. Previously, he was throwing away the bricks, so to speak, when they were not seeing eye to eye, especially on most of the projects concerned. but now it's still the same wall that is being built with the same blocks as well. What is the discernible difference on this? That's a question that's being raised. But they're saying we need to go digital. And Huduma number was meant to make sure that everything is streamlined for us to be digital compliant as a country. First, and the question is, we'll come to the registration of the number plates again, because also that needs to be digitized. Everyone needs to be digital with the new face of the number plates. But let me just hear from you.
You know, the danger, Dibal, is that to use the words of Professor Naituli here, is that these regimes have become transaction. Yeah, their main business is just transactions. And while I do have a lot of respect for Dr. Green, at times, if I've been suspected of stealing maize from a store, then you make me a watchman at that particular store, then you are jeopardizing the presence of any maize in that store. It can be stolen, and it will be blamed on me whether I've stolen it or not. So we are not saying these guys are thieves, but if you are suspected of committing a crime within a certain place, then you are made in charge of that crime scene. It means we are compromising the integrity of the scene. Now, when I look at that cartoon, it's a very nice one. I remember during our earlier days, and I'm sure people around the table will remember, anything was done under new management, new KCC, new. You know, new does not make anything new unless there is serious thought process. This new Huduma number that we are seeing is like the BBI that we have a charade about these talks. The same way it was started at the beginning by the former president is the same way this president has also started this, whether he believes in bipartisan talks or not. It is like whatever the other one was doing, do it yourself and let it succeed. And therefore, perhaps they were fighting the other number for reasons that are not explained logically. It could be because it was a deal for others, and therefore now it is a deal for us to succeed. So my worry is that we do not seem to understand that an institution of government is a continuous institution, and therefore there must be change with continuity. It is like once somebody else has left town, you just do things your way, and you do not believe in the institutions that you run. It worries me, and that's why we are condemning anybody who was perceived to have stolen in the previous regime to be given a chance to play any role. Well, they are here in town for another 4 years, but doesn't mean we have to condone them because we are stuck with them.
Right. I was just looking at the figures as well regarding the Huduma number, the 10 billion shillings, and this 1 billion shillings, just harking back to that particular history. We saw Treasury had set aside 1 billion shillings for those who missed the Huduma number. Could that would be the 1 billion shillings they are actually calling it the Maisha?
I don't know, I still go the chief.
Because they're saying it was the 1 billion for those who had missed for the registration of a Huduma number, which never happened.
Yes.
Now, by then, they were putting aside 1 billion shillings. And this is the 1 billion shillings that now we are talking about right now that is meant to be costing the Maisha card. And these are the concerns that are being raised. As I said, it was 700 billion shillings. Of course, the amount was 10 billion shillings, and not that by eye-popping figure. I correct myself. We take a short break. When we circle back, we peel back on these layers that if we really need the numbers, and what is the safety of the data. And first of all, can the government tell us where did my data, me as a Kenyan, went? They took even my name of the smallest village to track me down to where I am. I need to know. I was to be given a slip. Up to now, I don't have it. For that particular data, what have they done with that particular data. And even as we're going the digital way, we have also the Ardhi House that digitized some of the title deeds. And information coming to hand as well is that maybe even the title deeds that sometimes we do hold, they will just be mere papers at the end of the day. Because even the way the Ardhi House is built, the basements, I'm given to understand that even if we have an earthquake, Ardhi House can be stable, because on the basement where they're putting all these archives of the title deeds, that